Me to go live?
Rebuild of the favorites. We here for the latest. South side or the north side. Not tuned to the greatest. Home team for the home teams. Both sides got our own rings. On the mound or the long ball. But we don't put the wrong strings. Yeah. It's that time of the year now. Wrigley or Ganty, so the whole league that we hear now. New show with a new mood. Discussions and interviews. Trade rumors that might be. This is Pinwheels and Knife.
Hello and welcome to the Pinwheels and Ivy podcast. I'm Mitchell Kaminsky. That's Aldo Soto. Feels good to say that. I'm usually playing the Pinwheels pregame show, but you'll notice this is not a Wednesday afternoon or a Wednesday evening. It's Friday, so rare day where our schedules get intertwined. Good night to talk some baseball with spring training back in full swing. Although a couple games early on for the Cubs, I guess early initial reactions from the Cubs' first two starts. We got a lot to get to. Tonight. We're going to talk about the Clevinger signing in just a second, but I guess, early impressions from the Cubbies so far this spring.
I mean, just great to see baseball being played again. We always talk about there's like that dead time in January when like it's been a month where like no sign, like just signings stop happening. We like bitch and complain about the teams not making any moves. The moves that they do make, we complain about. But like now we get to talk about actual baseball. Great to see. Cubs 2-0. Both wins are of the Dodgers. Dodgers dynasty over already. Year one. They're dead already. But no, just good stuff. One former White Sox pitcher that we'll get to who just like blew me away, blew Craig Counsell away on Thursday coming out of the bullpen. Came out of nowhere because I remember when the Cubs signed him, it was like, why did the Cubs sign this guy? But guys hitting home runs, prospects looking great. All good so far. Number one thing I'll say, we've been saying it ever since we started Pin Lizzie and Ivy podcast. No injuries. Just everyone. Actually, there have been a couple injuries, so scratch that. Owen Casey are at groin. But no major injuries yet. No major injuries. But we're like less than a week in.
Yeah, before the season gets in full swing. The thing that stood out to me, Craig Counsell was talking about how impressed he was with the defense. And now obviously it's still pretty early. And I've made the mistake in the past, like putting too much stock into spring training games. Like they really don't dictate if you're going to do well. Like Zach Collins, for example, he tore it up one spring and then like he didn't turn out to do anything.
Pinwheels and Ivy podcast guest, Zach.
Yeah. However, I think for a Cubs, like this is a Sox issue too, but for the Cubs, like, defense has been an issue at certain positions over the past couple of years. And the fact he was really happy with the infield defense, I think that's a encouraging sign.
The one guy I'm going to shout out early on, Gage Workman, who guarantee you 0.001% of baseball fans knew who he was coming after the 2024 season. Cubs picked him up in the Rule 5 draft from the Tigers. For those unfamiliar, any pick in the Rule 5 draft, the team has to carry that guy on their active roster for the whole year outside of if he's like on the injured list. He's 24, 25 years old. He's never played above a Double-A. Last year, it was his third year at Double-A, but he was great. He had like a 140 WRC plus. Fantastic. Cubs get him lefty bat, plays third base in his first game on Thursday. Makes a great like shorthanded pickup at third. Starts a 5-4-3 double play. Craig Counsell takes note of that. He also hit a home run. Got a single off Yamamoto from the Dodgers. So that was impressive that he's competing for a roster spot. That might also be why there's another player that was DFA'd, Alexander Canario. It's like, well, we maybe prioritizing this guy's good defense at third base, a position where right now it's Matt Shaw, but he's maybe dealing with a little bit of an oblique. And as we saw in 2024, Cubs third baseman, that defense was really bad defense at third base with Morel. Madrigal took a step back when Wisdom was in there. He was bad. Isaac Paredes, when Cubs traded for him, he wasn't that good in the second half. He wasn't expected to be great, but he's a little shaky at times. So Gage Workman, I don't know. He's on the radar or not. Cubs fans know him. They know the name. So maybe, the Q score jumped from 0.001 to 50% now.
It's a
Good
good
things for
blue
Gage
collar
Workman.
name too. I must say, as far as baseball names go, Gage Workman. That sounds
Even better, Mitch, because he hit a home run and late in the game, like the 6th or 7th inning. And obviously everybody goes to his minor league page to look him up. Like, oh, where's this guy? Who's this guy? His middle name is Tater.
Oh, let's go.
But I am questioning one thing. If your middle name is Tater, I mean, Gage is also a good first name. But you got to go Tater Workman, right? Just drop the Gage.
I almost like the three, like a pimp named Slickback from the Boondocks, like Gage Tater Workman. I kind of think it flows well. That's Gage Tater Workman.
Amazing. I mean, everyone thought it was like, is this Photoshop? Like, there's no way that's his middle name. What an amazing name. Tater.
Hey, gotta love it. Good start. And you know what? He's known for the defense too right now, and he's got the name with Tater. So you gotta love that. He's still embracing the glove. We got Frank in the chat. Let Getz cook. Chris Getz did some cooking. I don't know if most fans enjoyed the cooking, but for the third consecutive string, White Sox bringing in Mike Clevinger. This time around, it's going to be on a minor league deal. He's got an invite to spring training. Chris Getz kind of went out today and was explaining that signing. Now, it's no secret. He's not well liked by the majority of the fan base. Obviously, the domestic violence allegations and child abuse allegations was cleared by the league on the basis that he would go to therapy. I'm not going to get into any of that. I can understand why fans would not want to root for him once again because all that. I get it. It's frustrating. But from a strictly baseball perspective, I think that move made a whole lot of sense. So Getz explained his reasoning being essentially, he's like, I think we can make it, his stuff, I think would be good in the back end of the bullpen. We're going to give him a shot to be a bullpen guy out of the back end. His exact quote, he was talking to reporters today. He said, we felt like giving him a chance to see if he could help our team in some capacity was worth a look. Curious enough to see what it looks like on a minor league deal. So I think from the White Sox perspective, they're looking at it like, look, this bullpen's got a lot of question marks. So, what's the risk of bringing in Clevinger on a cheap deal? Might be able to help us in the bullpen. And he has to almost help him in the bullpen because if you look at the rotation right now, and this is why it was so confusing initially before he said all that, they got 9 guys already competing for a spot in the rotation. And a lot of those guys are younger guys. I'll rattle through the name, like Jonathan Cannon. That's a prospect you're going to want to see prioritize over Clevinger. He's going to have a part of the future. Martin Perez, he'd probably be my pick for the opening day starter. He's not going to move the team in the future, but he's going to be your innings eater. Davis Martin, Sean Burke, Drew Thorpe, Kai Bush, Nick Nastrini, all guys that could be with the team long term. And that's not even mentioning Bryce Wilson either, who's also going to be in the mix. And I know they got a couple other guys there. So you really got no shot to be in the starting rotation. So that's why I was a little bit confusing. But as far as the reliever stuff goes, I don't know why you're so confident he could be a good reliever. His fastball only averages 93 miles an hour. It's been like that his entire career. Now, you can make the argument it's because he's a starter. But, okay, even if he can max out and throw harder, he struggled with control last year. That was nearly a 12% walk. I think he had 11.4% walk rate. You're a reliever, you can't be handing out all those free passes. Now, it might have been a bit of an outlier because he had all the neck issues last year. And so that was typically higher than his normal average. But you got a guy coming off an injury who doesn't throw very hard and fans don't like. So, okay, I get you want to take a flyer on him, but is the juice really worth the squeeze? You spent all offseason trying to, building some goodwill with the fans. You brought back Sox Fest. You made this Garrett Crochet trade. You got an exciting haul of prospects. And it feels like you undid a lot of that for what? Is he really going to make an impact on this team? Now, I could see taking a flyer on him. If this team was a contender, hey, we're one piece away. We want some more pitching depth. Let's bring in a former all-star type pitcher like Clevinger. But is the juice really worth the squeeze for this? And it was the same thing last year, too. And at least then he was in the rotation. But now he's going to be what? Out of the bullpen? I mean, what do you think from the outside? Because it seems like we're the only team giving him a shot.
I was going to say, I still remember back from when they originally signed him back in 2023. And it was like an early signing. It was one of the first major starting pitchers that signed. And at the time, everyone's like, at that time it was Rick Hahn. It's like, what the hell is Rick Hahn doing, giving him $12 million or whatever, $8 million plus an opt out, or that ended up being $12 million. And it's like, there's a reason that he took that, because he knew that he wasn't getting anything better. Rick Hahn got worked over. What the hell? The story comes out later, like after the signing. Shit
Which, by
hits
the
the
way, I don't give
fan.
the White Sox the benefit of the doubt for that either, because of the Tony thing.
Mm-hmm.
They hired him when the DUI thing came out, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we knew about that." I mean, I would be shocked if they knew about that coming down.
So
the pipe.
that happens, and like everyone's like, okay, like they got, whatever. If you take it for the word, it's like, okay, like bam, they got blindsided, bad luck. But then they bring him back again.
April 4th, too, by the way, is when he got signed. April 4th. The season had literally started when they made that move.
Yeah. So like, yeah, and then they signed him again, and it was Getz this time. It's like,
and once again, well into spring
it's
training.
like, okay, it's like, and again, it seems like it's like, why is it only the White Sox doing this? Like the 29 other teams also need pitching. Every team needs pitching. Like best, think of the best teams. The Dodgers are always looking for more pitching. They'll sign anybody if they think like they can be good for them. And it's the White Sox, and so you're thinking, well, okay, they know that they don't have any like quality pitching. They just need guys to get through a season, right? All right, fine. Like, baseball terms, like fine. You know a guy that could just you can throw out there, then eat some innings. He has the injuries. You know, like we know what this team is. It's like it's full on tear down. You just had the worst season ever. It's a full on just rebuild. It's gonna still be bad for a bit, and you bring him back again. And like you said, like what does Clevinger have on Chris?
Does he have championship pedigree that he can bring to that locker room? No. I mean, he could teach these guys how to dodge the COVID protocols, maybe.
Have I hand up? I kind of checked out of the White Sox last year. Sorry,
understandable.
But like, were there stories like do guys like him? Is he like, because from before it's like, oh, this guy's a dick.
I will say, and that was the kind of the narrative around him.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't sound like they had many issues. I know Pedro was defending him when they brought him back that second time last year, because they're like, this guy's a fierce competitor. We need more dudes like that. And I will give him that. Like every time he's on the mound, like you could see he gives a shit. And that's all I can ask for if you're wearing a uniform. But like last year, I mean, he wasn't even like a 6.75 ERA. And opponents were like tattooing a 295 expected batting average. So I don't know where all this special stuff's coming, where you think all of a sudden he's going to be a lockdown back end of the reliever out of the bullpen. And it's like not there. And even, okay, like you can make the injury argument. Because like, again, that was kind of an outlier if you look at his career numbers. But like a disc in your neck all messed up that you just had to have surgery on, that's no joke. And so he's behind the 8 ball once again, being this late to being signed. Like we don't know what type of program he was on. He was rehabbing most of the time. I just don't. It seemed like a stupid move for like what you're going to get a very little returns out of a guy that has some character issues. There's some baggage issues the fan base doesn't like, and he hasn't been all that good for the White Sox the last couple of years. I mean, it just goes to show, like he had a 3.77 ERA. No team wanted to trade for him, and it took the White Sox to come calling for him to bring him back. So like
that's it. And I remember at the time people were like, they brought him back again for last year. And I think that was like the argument some people were figuring, like, oh, well, like if he has another good season, like maybe they'll trade for him. It's like, well, no, you already saw that when he was a starting pitcher and he was somewhat, had quality innings out there, no one wanted him. No one wanted him at the end of the season, like when he was put on the waivers after the trade deadline. It's like there's, like you said, it's just not worth it. Like what? Even if the excuse, it's like, we're a bad team. We don't have any known quantity in the bullpen. That's why we're giving them a shot. Like you can sign it's someone else.
It's not good business. Like this team is trying to get some sort of positive momentum from the fans. The fans check, like you said, you checked out most of the fan base. Like, and you're not even a Sox fan. Most Sox fans, I would agree with you. They checked out all of last year. I mean, I was one of the few that were still watching games. I don't blame them. But like, so now you're bringing. I mean,
besides just like the fan friendly stuff, like bringing back Sox Fest, trying to have better vibes around the organization. I remember at the time when Chris Getz was first hired, like that was just a shit show because it's like, oh, they're just hiring in house, right? It was a bad process of how they hired him. But I think since then, I've been not like 100% impressed, but like I think he's made some good hirings for that front office. I think there's
I
like
agree.
real change happening in the minor league, like their farm system, the way their new philosophy is working. I think he's made like great hires. Like Brian Bannister for their pitching seems like that was like an A+ hire.
Walker McKibben, I think
Mhm.
another good pickup from the
There's
Brewers. I think you're.
there
I
you
think you're.
go. Like good front office hire, good like building up like your minor league philosophy, because we all know that it's just been so backwards for so long for the White Sox. And then to turn around and be like, all right, guys, well, build all that up. We brought this terrible guy who's probably has not like what's the
Jump into the okay.
let him go in 2 weeks, right? Because like, oh well, he's still kind of hurt, not good. It's like, okay, well, you did that just to like get fans irritated for a couple weeks. Like, what?
Yeah.
Okay,
There's a good chance he does not make the team. To your point, and then the fans are still going to be pissed even if you DFA him because you still brought it back. Like you want it, and like to the point with the fan base being pissed off. This is what my friend, and this is how desperate the White Sox are to sell tickets. My buddy got called by a ticket rep the other day. They were trying to really push like a 10-game flex pack, and obviously he didn't want to spend his money on a 10-game flex pack for a team that just lost 121 games. He ended up like doing it. But the White Sox season ticket or the season ticket rep, to get him to make that sale, he included 2 free jerseys, 2 free hats, and 2 of those games in the flex pack, you're allowed to sit behind home plate, like included. Like all these perks just to get a 10-game flex pack. Like that's how desperate they're just giving away free shit right now. Anyway, we'll go back to the Cubs really quick. We'll talk about another pitcher. I think I know who you're talking about. Former Sox guy, now with the Cubs. You were a little bit surprised by it early on. I'll give you the floor. Who is this former Sox pitcher for the White Sox fans not following?
Former White Sox pitcher, former like White Sox, or I think still White Sox nemesis, Brad Keller.
Nemesis, yep.
So the Cubs signed him to a minor league deal. You know, that happens every year, guys. You know, new teams try to fix guys. I remember writing him up, looking at the stats. I mean, he was bad for the White Sox last year. I think a lot of that, like his first 3 or 4 starts in April, were bad.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't hate him.
I did try to find a silver lining. I think like, what was it? Or no, that was Chris Flexen. But I think Brad Keller, like, just nothing looked impressive. The strikeout rate was below average. Walked guys. His fastball, you know, talk about it's different for starters. Obviously, relievers are going to throw harder. They're only throwing 1-2 innings at a time. But I think he's only throwing like 93, 94. So he comes into camp. He pitches the first game on Thursday. He comes into like 1 inning, starts the second inning. He gets 5 outs. He strikes out a couple of guys. But in the middle of this, at first he was throwing like 94, 95, nothing special again. Then all of a sudden, the radar gun is lighting up like 96, 97. He gets up to 98. He gets back-to-back strikeouts. He freezes 2 guys on 97-mile-per-hour fastballs. Obviously catches the attention of everybody. It's like, whoa, where's this coming from? Because I think for his career, it's like a 93-mile-per-hour fastball that he's been averaging. All of a sudden, he's throwing 97, 98. It's like, okay, that could be something. Again, he's on a minor league deal, so like if he gets added to the roster, the Cubs have to like get rid of somebody else. But it's turning heads. Craig Counsell mentioned it on Friday. It's like, yeah, the 2 guys, you know, who we mentioned earlier, Gage Workman, his defense. Craig Counsell noted that, and then he's like, Brad Keller, that velocity, that was nice. That was good to see. That was a little surprising. So, Bench, I just need to know, like, Brad Keller, what do you remember? What were the positives? I know the results were bad.
People like to hate on Brad Keller, and I get it for the Tim Anderson thing. And I was a big Tim guy. I wasn't too happy when that happened either. You know, I get why they didn't like him. But again, with like, you know, when he's wearing the uniform, I was always rooting for him when he's bad. I was one of those guys like, Brad Keller's pitching. I hope he gets shelled. I think as a guy, like, they put him in a lot of they utilize him in a lot of weird positions. So he never really had a set role with the team. He really struggled as a starter. But I think he can be an effective guy. Like, your starter gets in trouble, you need 2-3 innings out of your bullpen. Like, I think a Brad Keller piece is not terrible. I didn't mind him with the White Sox. Now, as you mentioned, the numbers weren't great, But like to do the job for like the White Sox standards, where it's like, hey, you know, our guy got knocked out. Brad, go out there, eat some innings, and he did. And there's some games like he was out there, and you could tell that like under normal circumstances he would have been pulled. Like he'd be getting shelled, and it's like, you know what, I just got to keep throwing because like he knew his role there. I think with the Cubs is going to be a bit different because they're expecting to be contending for a division. So you're not just going to have the luxury of going out there posting like a near 6 ERA and like being the organization. Yeah. That's all good. But I think, to your point, it's worth a flyer. If he's throwing harder, you need a wrong reliever out of that bullpen. I think why not give Brad Keller a shot?
I think the one thing that does concern me is if he's ever, or now that he's throwing harder, it's like, well, if he has to throw like, 3 times a week, that change from being a starting pitcher to like now being in the bullpen, like how, like that new stress on the arm, it's a newer thing for him. So like, does that cause injury? I think it has to increase the likelihood of an injury.
What's the
What was that?
What did the Cubs bring him in on? Minor league deal?
It's a minor league deal, so they're just it's a flyer. It's like no risk, only high reward. But I definitely that just stood out because I remember when they signed him, and in my head it was like it was starting pitching depth, and I'm like, I mean, all right, fine, whatever. Like if he's like staying on, if he's gonna stay with the team, it's gonna be like at AAA. It's not like he's gonna be in the rotation to start the year. Like that wasn't gonna be a thing. It's like, oh, depth starter in case like the number 6, 7, 8 guy gets hurt. It's like, okay, well, Brad Keller, we know that he's a starting pitcher before. He's been in the majors. He has some experience. But it's like, oh, no, now he's maybe just reliever, maybe just a 1 inning, 2 inning stints, gets to cut loose on the fastball, and hopefully that leads to better strikeout numbers for him, which obviously is better for him. And if he does stick around, a good option for the Cubs. Cubs just every team. I'm always jealous. Even when the White Sox would struggle, it seemed like you guys always had a couple guys who just could throw hard out of the bullpen, and that's always nice. You need to miss bats late innings, and the Cubs just haven't had that for a while.
I don't know if you're trying to turn Brad Keller into that guy, if he's going to be that guy that's missing bats and throwing gas out of the bullpen, but as long as he's not contending for a starting rotation job, then I think you're in good shape. It doesn't hurt to see him coming out of the bullpen. The guy I do think could be a contention for a starting rotation. I'm curious to see how you think the Cubs would implement him if he makes the team. Another former White Sox guy, Chris Flexen. I actually really like Chris Flexen with the White Sox last year. Now, he like many on the Sox, he ran into some bad luck. He had an obscure streak, 20 games in a row that Flexen had started, the White Sox lost.
Oof.
According to ESPN history, broke a record because the previous mark from a starter was 19 back in 1909. So long-standing streak that Flexen finally snapped. But that said, he would be a guy, and like he'd be a 5th starter type candidate. But it was not like unusual to see him give you like 6 innings, a 3-run ball. Like that's kind of what he is. Like he's not gonna blow you up, but he'll give you 6 solid innings. He'll give up like 3 runs or so. And like I think, that he'll keep you in the game. He competes hard. He keeps you in the game. I was a big fan of Chris Flexen, and he gave us a lot of innings last year too, which I also appreciate.
I was surprised. I think when I looked, it was 160 innings. I think I saw from Herb Lawrence, it was like only like one of like 50 something starting pitchers that even threw that many innings in 2024. Looking at his numbers, looking at like the different streaks, I think he finished off all right. Like I think his last, I wrote was like 46 innings, like at 3.5 ERA. Good. I mean, you'll take that. Like you said, like 6 innings, 3 runs, quality start. I think he had 11 quality starts. He reminds me. So the Cubs had an early injury, like first week of camp. They got in a little earlier. Javier Assad, who's like 5th starter, swingman type. Also not like an overpowering guy, but he's like what you're saying with Chris Flexen. It's like, he'll go out there. He's not going to get beat up. But he's not going to like dominate. He's not going to throw like 7, 8 innings of 1-run ball, but he'll give you a quality start like a majority of the times. With that injury, I think that's just good depth. At first, I did shit on it. I'm like, Brad Keller, now Chris Flexen. Like, I want a Garrett Crochet from the White Sox, not these guys. It's like, all right. I mean, these are just solid depth guys that you could have.
He had a 4.95 ERA last year, but it was a lot better than I think. He was better than that number showed.
Yeah. I think his first 3 starts in April were like really bad. I think that's what it was.
And there was also a couple times, kind of similar to Keller, where they needed him. He was a starter for most of the year, but there's a couple times like he had to come out of the bullpen, be a long reliever. Our starter just got shelled. Look, you're going to have to take it on the chin and like give us 3 innings, even though you are getting absolutely shelled. So that didn't help. Yeah. But also you got to factor in this guy, his whole career has pitched mostly in hitter friendly parks. Colorado's where he was before he came to the White Sox. White Sox, obviously another hitter friendly park. And their defense last year was terrible. So he wasn't getting any extra outs, or people weren't stealing outs from him. And when you're not a big strikeout guy, and like his kind of MO is like, look, guys are going to make contact. Like you're going to have to play good defense behind Chris Flexen. And the White Sox didn't. So I think that 4.95 ERA looked probably a little bit worse than he actually was, which is still pretty, like, I mean, that's respectable. I mean, it's not great, but you know.
A couple of good seasons with the Mariners too.
Yep.
Was it like 2021 and 22? Good seasons there. Obviously, that's a very pitcher-friendly ballpark in Seattle, but still, I think the interesting thing about that was that came after. I think he pitched in 2020. He pitched in the KBO, just like who was the guy you guys signed last year?
Eric Fetty.
Yes. So like, hey, maybe figure something out, because I think he struggled. I think it was with the Mets at first. Didn't get a lot of run with them, but not a lot of good results early on in his MLB career. You know, COVID season, no minor league year, so he goes over to the KBO, does a decent job there, comes back, 2 good years in Seattle, and then I think he had a bad year to start in 23. He goes to Colorado, like tough for any pitcher, and then last year with the White Sox, I think like you said, that 4.95 ERA probably looks worse than what he actually pitched to. Decent. Like, now I'm not telling Cubs fans to like, Chris Flexen, but it's like, hey, could be a lot worse as a AAA depth starter in case of emergency.
So going off of that with the Keller and Flexen combo, but ideal 5-man starting rotation heading into, or maybe he goes 6. I don't know, but ideal rotation heading into opening day.
Well, it's gonna be Shota Banaga's gonna be the opening day starter. Well, in Japan. Then you go. I think they go. I don't know would you go back-to-back lefties? Do you think that matters now? No.
You put your best 5 out there. I don't. Who cares?
Yeah. So you got to go Justin Steele too. The interesting thing about the Cubs season is, again, they're starting those 2 games in Japan against the Dodgers, the 18th and 19th of March. So those 2 games, they're like throwing all their starters. It seems like, so all those guys are going to be starting. But after Steele, you got Tyon, Matthew Boyd, another lefty. Cubs are going to have 3 lefties in the rotation, and then it goes to that number 5 spot. And we talked about it with Kevin last week. We want it to be Ben Brown just because he has the highest ceiling. Like, that is the guy who has the best stuff, the highest trajectory out of, like, because the other guys they signed are kind of like Chris Flexen types. It's Colin Ray, who was with the Brewers last year, had good numbers, kind of fizzled out at the end, but decent 5th starter. Behind that, like I said, Ben Brown. Like, that's who we want it to be, just because he's like the younger guy. He's the guy who, if it works out, he's like a number 2, maybe a number 1 in a rotation down the road. And then obviously we don't know right now about Javier Assad. He's still, not throwing. So maybe he's not ready by opening day in April. He's definitely not going to be ready in the middle of March.
And that's where I think the Flexen signing comes in. Because even with Ben Brown, as much as, like, look, as a Cubs fan, I would rather tune in to watch a Ben Brown start than a Chris Flexen start any day of the week. Obviously, that's going to get you more excited. But if they feel like either of those guys aren't ready, like, there's no need to rush up and throw them into the fire for no reason if they're not ready. Like, you can give them a little bit more time. You can give Assad some time. And Flexen could be Flexen or Keller, really, a good holdover that you could easily cut ties with once you feel like those guys are ready.
And like the way that some of these signings went down, like the way they're building up this pitching staff. Like, they're gonna have just so many guys pitch. It's literally gonna be like it. Like, we might see stretches like where it is gonna be a 6-man rotation, and that 6-man could be interchangeable. They could be like, all right, this time it's gonna be Colin Ray. Next time around, it's gonna be Jordan Wicks. I forgot to mention him. He started on Friday. That's another starting pitcher option. He was their He started the 3rd game last year, and right now he's competing for the 5th spot. So, like, the Cubs have quality depth here, which is a good thing. And like, I think the way that the Cubs are gonna, like, the way that Kirk Counsell is gonna use these guys is gonna be fascinating to see. So I think we're gonna see a lot of interchangeable guys like that 5th, 6th spot in the rotation. You might see Shota Imanaga getting an extra day off just because he pitches better with that extra day off. And I'm sure that's like most starting pitchers, they pitch better with like 5 days rest compared to 4. So interesting again with the early injury to Assad. They also had mentioned it briefly last week. One of their prospects that was at AAA, Brendan Birdsell, he had a lat injury, so he shut down. So like that takes away one of your options in April. So yeah, like I would not be surprised if Chris Flexen makes a start in April. Would I like it? Like, would I be happy about it? Not necessarily, but again, you just kind of have to like survive early on. Because like Assad, you hope that that's not a serious thing, and then he comes back. You know that he's like that 5-6 innings, 2-3 runs. You're not going to get blown out in one of his starts. He's always going to give you a chance to win, and then you keep rolling. And hopefully there's no other hiccup in for these starting pitchers.
I almost think, to your point about these April games, because like a lot of times you'll hear the narrative like, it's only April, it's a 162 game season. But how you start off in April can really set the tone for the rest of your season. Like even the 2023 White Sox, they got off to that horrible start in April. That was a team at the time, everyone's like, well, they could in theory still contend for the division. And they were buried so far in the standings early in April, that team quit. And I think you dig yourself too big of a hole. So to your point, having all that extra depth and making sure you can survive, like tread water. Now you could survive like a 500 April or like, losing April, but
and the Cubs have a tough start.
You can't get buried in the standings early. It's going to
have a tough start to their schedule. It's like Dodgers, and even in the regular season, got to face Arizona and that pitching staff. That's going to be a tough series.
Yeah.
I think they have to play like the Padres. I think they play the Dodgers again. So a lot of tough early season games. Like you said, you don't have to go out there and be like 15-7, but like you can't get killed. You can't go 7-15. You have to go like be 10-12. Even if you're under 5, like you can't get buried early and the Cubs have done it too. Like 2023, they ended up having a great second half. But what killed them? They sucked in April and May. Can't have that again.
I wonder how much the weather almost plays a factor into that. Just like because it's so miserable playing in Chicago in April. I don't have to make excuses for the guys, but to help you guys though, you do have some extra offense. Not everyone thinks that we're talking about Justin Turner, but really I'm talking about the pride of Naperville, Mr. 244 hitter, 1 home run, Nicky Lopez, Gold Glove candidate though. Does Nicky Lopez, and I was a big Nicky Lopez fan. He was one of the few guys that I thought like that gets brought in that he did his job to like exactly how I thought he was, and was like, all right, that was a pretty productive sign. Played good defense. Nicky Lopez ain't a good hitter. I think it was 244 off the top of my head, which, I'd take that. Now with a good team or better team than the White Sox, how much runway does he even make the team? Where do you see Nicky Lopez, the pride of Naperville, fitting in on the Cubs?
I can't lie. I got immediate PTSD. I'm like, oh my God, it's left-handed Nick Magical. I can't do it again. I can't do it again. Can't do it again. Man. I mean, he has a shot to make the team just because he is another infield. He has a chance to make the team because Nico Horner, we don't know if Nico Horner is going to be ready. He's slowly recovering from that flexor surgery, right flexor surgery on his forearm. So like he's still ramping up his throwing, which is fine. Take your time. No rush back. So just because of that, the Cubs, and that's probably why they still have Vidal Brujan, another backup infielder, just still on the 40-man, hanging around to see if the Cubs need another infielder, if Horner isn't ready. I mean, he was good defensively, right? I mean, you saw him up front, so I like that. And that, hey, I've always said if you're good at one thing, I'll take you on the team. Fine, but you have to be good. If it's defense, cool, but like you better make every play.
What was nice about Nicky was he could play multiple positions, and there's a lot of guys that can play multiple. Like Leary Garcia, you can play 7 positions. Well, he was below average at most of them. So how much value is he really providing you? For Nicky, like he was a above average second baseman and a serviceable shortstop. And if you needed him to play third in a pinch, I'm sure he could. It was more shortstop, second base, but like you can move him around the infield, and he's giving you serviceable to above average defense.
So that's good to hear. Because I think so he does have a shot. I mean, because he can play second, he can back up Swanson at shortstop. Again, I'm not expecting anything on offense from him, but if he's the 26th man on the roster, I mean, hey, we saw it with him when he was on the Braves in 2023. Like he can be a useful player. Like I think he had like a 1.1 WAR, so he can be of value.
Yeah.
You just obviously don't want him starting like 120 games in a season.
That would be tough offensively.
Yeah, like that's gonna just bury you. You don't want that. That would just be full on. Oh my god, it's Nick Magical again. That you just don't want that. Again, that's kind of like where, in a way, the White Sox we kind of traded. The Cubs are trying to sign Josh Rojas, who ended up signing with the White Sox, and obviously Nicky Lopez leaves the White Sox and signs a minor league deal.
Rojas signing, ironically enough, that you say that. I was like, oh, this is kind of an upgrade from Nicky Lopez.
And then the Cubs ended up getting they ended up signing John Birdie right after, and he's like another. He's like he's fine. So then he's their other. He can play all over the infield, and I think left field maybe. Again, that left. He can play left field. Seems like the Larry Garcia. He can play left field.
Yeah.
It's like we don't need John Birdie starting left field. In left field. So the Cubs have that one bench guy. Obviously, you need a backup catcher. That's Carson Kelly. Justin Turner is technically another bench guy. He's your backup DH first baseman. He'll probably get some starts at first base against tough left-handed pitchers. And Bush will. By the way, Kevin was really excited about the Justin Turner signing.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that. Let's just is there anything else?
Because I wanted you to be on this show because I was going to ask him, because his biggest complaint last summer was every time that Craig Counsell would pinch hit Patrick Wisdom for Michael Bush against the lefty late in a game. Now this time around, Justin Turner is a lot better hitter than Patrick Wisdom, but that's going to happen again.
Well, I was surprised to hear you say, and I guess the way the roster looks, especially if you have Suzuki DHing, like it's going to be tough where you're going to put him. But if you look at Turner's numbers last year, you guys are just trying to sign Bregman, and obviously Bregman, much better defender. Offensively, though, the last 3 seasons, those slash lines, you pull them up, are very, very similar. Turner's still got a lot of pop. He gets on base. I think if for a team that's struggling or that struggled at times offensively last year, that's a guy I'd want in my lineup every day. I would trust Justin Turner. I mean, you might call it be great. I would take Justin Turner over Suzuki for a full season DH.
No.
At this point in time.
Yeah, but look at Suzuki's numbers. Suzuki was like a top 20.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. All right, maybe not. Maybe we'll pump the brakes on that. But I would still want Turner in my lineup almost every day. Like, I get why he would be good coming off the bench, but I would want him as an everyday guy.
I think the reason that at this point he is a good bench option is just because of his age.
Yeah.
Like you're hopefully reducing the risk that all of a sudden he falls off. And obviously if he gets 500 plate appearances, he's going to get exposed a lot more if he only gets like 350 plate appearances. I was seeing some of his numbers. I think he was in the 1 percentile of swing speed. Not good. Not good. But I think he was like in the 99th percentile for like sweet spot barrel percentage. Yeah, so when he does hit it, like he's getting out in the sweet spot, he's just not swinging it hard. When that's probably has to do with his age, getting that he can't get around that fastball as quick as he used to. But again, I read that professional hitter. You're right though. Like if the Cubs did not have if Michael, holy shit. My dog's going crazy over Justin Turner. If the Cubs didn't have if Michael Bush wasn't if Michael Bush didn't have as good of a season as he did last year, there would be like a lot more eyes on this signing. There would be like, oh, like Justin Turner's coming in, like stepping in, and he's gonna get like a lot of playing time at first base.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people like. I think I didn't like the way it was framed. The signing, it's like, oh, the Cubs pivoted from Bregman to Turner. Like, not really. Like Alex Bregman, if the Cubs signed him, he was going to be starting at third base. Justin Turner isn't hopefully ever starting at third base for the Cubs.
And he said he took a pay cut to come to Chicago too. So there's a chance you could have gotten both of them if it was a Bregman plan at third, and
that would have been great because you still would have needed a backup first baseman.
I will say this though for the Cubs, and I wasn't a part of that Bregman discussion. There's a 3-hour podcast. They have a good discussion.
Check it out, Cubs.
Tune in if you got some free time this weekend. Pinwheels and Ivy on YouTube. But anyway, I actually, what the hell was I going to say? What the hell is my point? Oh, yes. I don't fault the Cubs for not converting on the Bregman thing. I thought they gave them the best thing. They gave him a respectable offer. That was a legit offer. You don't want to take it. You don't want to take it. But you're not going to overpay. From where he's at this point in his career, he's still a very good ball player, but like he's not a guy you want to overpay for and then be stuck paying all the back half of his contract down the road when, he's washed. I thought they made him a fair offer. Like I thought they put in a good effort. It wasn't,
The biggest takeaway for me, at least from the whole Alex Bregman negotiation at the end, was just Jed Hoyer talking afterwards and being like, so talking luxury, like the CBT and the penalties, and if you go over the first tier, I know fans hate talking about that, but like the Cubs, as we see a lot of teams, they don't want to go over that first tier because then you have to pay the luxury tax. And this year, it's up to $241 million is the first tier. The Cubs, before signing Justin Turner, they were at like $209 million. So like about $32 million right below that first tier. The Cubs, their offer was 4 for $115, which was like at $28.5 million, about that. So this still gave him some wiggle room underneath that number. Obviously, the Cubs don't get him. They offered him, like, the AAV was the lowest. The guaranteed money was the lowest. But again, I agree with it. I think it was a decent offer. Jed Hoyer is like, yeah, I have to ask the Ricketts if they could extend the payroll, if we can go above and beyond. The next day or a couple of days later, he's like, yeah, we've had to go over the offseason. We've had constraints. Jed Hoyer's in his last year of his deal, year 5. He doesn't have an extension yet. He's not outwardly saying like, guys, it's ownership that's not allowing me to spend, but he's laying out the clues. He's laying out the crumbs. Like, guys, I could have offered more to Alex Bregman, but I had to beg the owner just to get this offer.
Yeah.
And then the other part of it was he mentions Cody Bellinger's deal from last offseason. And he's like, yeah, in a similar way that we had to ask ownership last year to overextend the pay, like their finances, is a similar situation now. And everybody's like, well, what is this? What do you mean you have to overextend? Like, they barely even got to the first tier last year. And now that you do have a winning team, you improved. You got Kyle Tucker. You got a closer, Ryan Presley. You shored up the bullpen. You have a top prospects coming in that you're hoping can fill in if there are injuries. You feel confident about that. You can make another home run signing with Bregman, and it's like, oh well, you have to like get on my hands and I have to get on my knees to beg just to get an offer in. Just puts all the onus on ownership. And again, I tweeted, and I get it. Like, yeah, like obviously any GM could, like you and me, Mitch, we can go out there and be like, yeah, if we just have a blank checkbook, we can probably do a decent job as running a team. If we just offer any player that we liked, whatever money. And like, yeah, there are budgets, but you're the Cubs. Fine, you don't have Dodgers money, you don't have Yankees money, you don't have Mets money, but like you should be able to do $30 million a year, $32 million a year.
Yeah.
And it's like to hear Jed Hoyer be like, yeah, like this is the best we could do. this is as far as we could extend because that's what the Ricketts allowed us to do. Was
By the way,
was
look up
tough
the
to hear.
Ricketts net worth right now. The Ricketts family net worth. They just bought
Right? They're up to like a cool
they
5-6
paid
billion
$30
probably.
million. Yeah,
Hey, Creighton Kenny was on Marquee on Friday talking up their new seats out in the bleachers. Their new there's money coming in, guys, but they got to break even. That's the other thing. Tom Ricketts, just terrible PR. Every time Tom Ricketts talks, it's awful. It's just awful. Because he
yeah.
had that break even comment early in the offseason.
I'll give him credit for that, and I agree with you. Like you listen to him, and it's very frustrating. At least though, he has the balls to speak to the media. Yeah, Jerry never does. Terms or a press release. Now we saw what happens when he shows his face in front of the public at Sox Fest this year. Or it's another day, but at least he will address the media. Yeah. So I'll give him credit for that. I mean, just a little bit. He's still an asshole, but we'll give him a little bit of credit.
It's just so, oh man, it's just so like that was the concerning part. It's like, oh, so like that was the best that you could do. Like it just seemed it was so off-putting. It's like, well, what does that mean next year? So like are you gonna overextend for Kyle Tucker? And like you would think the obvious answer is yes. But like now it's like, well, are they like or like any other free like Vlad Jr. is going to be a free agent if the Cubs aren't able to re-sign Tucker? Like, are they even going to be able to go after Vlad Jr.? We saw that they sat out on Juan Soto.
Like a lot. I mean, that goes without saying, but it sounds like he wants a ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah,
like, I think he wants like Juan Soto territory.
He's is he trying to play third base again, or are they sticking him at first still?
I think they're sticking him at first.
He's still at first. So like, yeah, like who's paying a guy $500 million to be a first base?
He did look like he'd slimmed down a little bit. The one interview I saw. Now it's tough to tell.
Maybe I think the best case for him is that he gets traded in the summer, and he gets to play third base somewhere else. He's like, hey guys, I can play third base. Pay me $500 million.
Did it make you feel any better missing out on Bregman, seeing some of the drama unfold in Boston with him and Devers and Cassis is coming out and like, yeah, no, Devers is our third baseman, and poor Bregman's just said they're like, I'll play wherever,
Well, a lot of Cub fans, and I'm with them. Hey, if the Red Sox want to get rid of that malcontent, the Cubs are happy to hear any trade offers for Rafael Devers.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a non-story by the time the season started. This is like one of those, hey, we're excited baseball's back. Let's make a big issue out of it. I think it's gonna.
I think that was just, as a lot of problems begin in life, just poor communication. Because I remember that night when the Bregman signing broke last Wednesday, Jeff Passan tweeted out that night. He's like, Alex Bregman. I think I responded to Zoe. He's like, wait, is Bregman going to play second base? And I answered back like, yeah, that's the plan, or like something like that. And I only said that because Jeff Passan's like, yeah, Alex Bregman is expected to play second base.
Yeah.
So there must have been some communication early on from the teams where it's like, okay, Devers, you're gonna stay at third base. If we bring in Bregman, he'll play second. And then they sign him, and he's out there taking ground balls at third. Devers gets asked, obviously, English isn't his first language. When he's asked about it, he's like, well, are you gonna move to DH first base? It's like, no, I'm a third baseman. He gets asked again. He's like, no, I play third base. It's like, well, and then I don't even think that's the thing. I don't even think that was the worst Red Sox story, because who was there? Was it Cassis?
Cassis, I think.
Cassis.
Yeah, that was
his comments were talking about the prospects and talking about what was that guy doing?
And so, as someone that works in the media now, I appreciate the fact they asked him a question and he did not he gave an honest answer, which you appreciate as someone.
That's true, because we get a lot of BS. Yeah,
you get so much BS. However, the Red Sox, I think, got to be smack themselves in the head. We should have given him more media training. You cannot, especially your second year in the league, second, third year. You can't be saying that. Who are you to be coming out there and saying that? Especially about a guy you just brought in that has World Series rings. It's been an All-Star. I mean, that's a terrible look all around.
And there's definitely a way that he could have said it in a non douchey way. Like he could have been like, they can come into they can come into spring training, they can compete, but they're gonna have to earn it, like something like that. But just be like, no, they don't they don't deserve to be up. Like
it was bad.
And like you said, it's not like he's not a 10-year veteran of the league. I was stuck. I remember seeing, I think it was just first it was written out, and I'm like, is this a parody account? I'm like, what? Right. Like I didn't recognize who the person tweeting it was, and I saw the video of it. Like, oh, he actually did say that.
I want to shift gears to the White Sox really quick because we too, not as exciting as the Cubs, but we do have a lot of roster battles. The competition in camp is going to be very tight. Hell, even at first base, which is the only really first base is the only position in the infield at least that's fully decided because Andrew Vaughn's going to be the first baseman. But his backup first baseman between Bobby Dahlback and Joey Gallo, I mean, that's going to be an interesting competition to watch. The most interesting one for me is second base because they have the most guys that can play second base. Now, if it was up for me, I would have Chase Mydroff be the opening day second baseman. The guy already showed he can hit in AAA. Last year, he led all the minor leagues in on-base percentage. The year before, he led the Red Sox organization in walks. The reason I like him is like, it bit me in the ass the last time with Madrigal, but he's got a very similar profile to him. He's a little bit of a bigger guy than Madrigal, which I think helps, but he's a very solid fielder. The arm strength could be a concern, but I think he's a solid fielder. He's got an advanced approach at the plate. He doesn't swing at many pitches out of the zone, but he does put the ball in play. Like he knows what to swing at, as evident by the high walk rates both years, which is something the White Sox historically have struggled with, and he puts the ball in play. So he doesn't have a ton of pop. I don't think he's going to be a future all-star, but he's got stability written all over him, which is what we need at that position because it's been a revolving door for so many years. You need someone that can get in there and be a professional. I think he's a guy that could give you he'll hit 270, maybe give you 10 homers and play a league average defense. And honestly, as your starting second baseman, there is nothing wrong with that. Fun fact with him, too, out of those four prospects, the guy from the Boston Globe, he was on Chuck Garfine's podcast, and they were doing a little inside the trade. He said Mydroff was the hardest guy to get out of that package. The Red Sox did not want to give him up. That was the hardest guy to get included in that deal, which was encouraging. Now, where it's going to be interesting is, and I think he might get screwed early on, is because Miguel Vargas and Lenin Sosa, and this is something that Chris Getz talked about, was saying like, yeah, guys that are going to be out of minor league options, it's going to play a factor. Those are two guys that are both out of minor league options, especially Miguel Vargas, who is someone you invested a pretty significant, you gave away a significant asset, Michael Kopech, to get him.
That was the blue chip player back, right?
That was yes.
Because that was part of the Fetty trade too. Like that was all
such a bad trade. It was such a
terrible trade.
He's the best player we got back, and he was literally like the worst player in baseball at like some stretches. Now I don't think all of that. Now Vargas, I don't think was obviously as bad as he showed last year, and he's another guy with the fake versatility where like he can play left field. Like I better not see him in left field after watching it last year. The only spots he should be playing: third base, second base. I think those are the only two spots that like we could see him playing. And he bulked up over the offseason. He added like over 20 pounds of muscle. So I think that's encouraging. But I think regardless of how he does in camp, Sosa and him are going to get a longer runway than a Mydroff would because they got more minor league options. Now, as for Sosa, I've sold all my Lenin Sosa stock. Not that I bought much to begin with. He did tear it up in the Venezuelan Winter League. He was also playing third base and shortstop, which I think could help his cause, especially he's playing shortstop for the most part, which I think could help him. But he's a guy I wouldn't be upset if they parted ways. But both of them, it sounds like, don't not be surprised if either of them, despite having a bad spring, and both of them make the team simply because the White Sox, hey, like we're giving them every opportunity to fail. More so Vargas, but I think that could be a deciding factor. But you look at second base, like here's the guys we got. Like it's like Rojas, Mydroff, Jacob Amaya, who we just brought in, or we brought in after a bad year last year. So like, there's a lot of guys. And Ramos at third. There's a lot of guys battling for very few spots.
I was gonna ask, is there any way like? Does Vargas defensively play himself out of the infield, and do you just have to like stick him at DH?
I don't think he can though, because I think the White Sox role right now, especially for a guy that he hit. Let me pull up this 12 X. He hit 104 with the White Sox last year.
He was awful. I remember
170. Like a 170 on base percentage. Good Lord. So I don't think you can have him as a DH only. Now, maybe it'll be a little bit better, but like even with the Dodgers, and like the argument for him was, well, he's coming from a World Series situation where he's with the best team in baseball to literally the worst team in baseball. That's tough on him. And I get that, but with the Dodgers, he's only hit with all that lineup protection. He slashed 239, 313, 423. So also not great. And also with the DH thing, I think you got the platoon. It's going to be Slater, Talkman. The guy who's not playing, probably going to be DHing. Or if Gallo makes the team, he'd be a DH candidate. Dahlbeck, I think, would be a DH candidate. So they got some guys that I think would fill that role where I don't see Vargas doing that.
Who's going to be the White Sox opening day shortstop?
That's a good question. I think it's going to be Rojas. I don't think I want Montgomery to be good, but like based off of what he did last year, I don't think he's ready. I don't think they're benefiting him by throwing him up there if he's not ready. I still think he's going to be a very good player. I think he's got a lot of skills that I like. I was shocked at how tall he was, like seeing him at Sox. I was like, holy crap. Like you knew he was tall, but like you could tell he was a basketball player. But look at his numbers in AAA last year. He really struggled. Like offensively, I think there's still a long way to go. And the reason you bring in all these depth pieces on a bad team, because like last year, and this was a big issue last year, the bottom fell out. They would play these guys and they'd struggle, but they couldn't afford to send them down because they didn't have anyone that could replace them in any of these positions. And now you bring in a guy like Rojas specifically for that reason. So as much as I'd love to see Montgomery as the opening day shortstop, I am willing to be patient with him. I think my guess, how I would do it right now, regardless of how spring training plays out, Rojas would be my starting shortstop opening.
And then with Sosa, I mean, I remember when he first came up and like he was getting played. It's like, what the hell are they doing with Sosa? And then he got to play a little more. Was really producing much. Did he have a strong end to this? I saw somebody say that. Did he finish strong? Good? Decent?
Okay. Not really strong. So
Better?
He played really well. His final 62 games, he hit 6 home runs and he batted .278. He also, this was surprising, he was in the top half of the MLB as far as like expected batting average. He was in like the upper half, so he was on the right side there. So that was encouraging. And then in Venezuela this year, he hit 392 batting average with 9 homers in 113 plate appearances. So like also solid showing, but his path to making the team is going to be through shortstop because I think Vargas, they would rather have Vargas at second. They would rather have Maydroff at second. So if Sosa wants to make the team, it's going to be as the shortstop. And that could even be like, you have him as the opening day shortstop. He gets his month or so. Once they feel Montgomery's ready, all right, kick rocks. So I could see that too. But.
Because I think it is is Ramos still going to be at third?
I would like him to be the opening day third
base.
He's going to have to battle again. He's going to be battling Rojas if he doesn't get the second base or shortstop job. He'll be battling Rojas and then Vargas. So Vargas's best path, I think, to being on the opening day roster is through third base. Mm-hmm. But like Ramos, I would almost rather have at third base because I really liked his defense last year. And I think he can still make strides offensively, but defensively, he was well above what I thought he was going to be.
Yeah, because I think Rojas, I remember when I was looking him up when he was rumored, when the Cubs were rumored to be interested in him, he is one of those guys where like, oh, he's versatile, but I think he's really bad defensively.
He is bad at shortstop. Yeah, it's his worst position for sure, and he's got the least amount of experience there. So that's all. Again, that's another reason why I could see. All right, maybe they have Sosa as the opening.
But then that's the thing. But I think they made some like promises to him. It's like he's going to get like a lot of playing time. Because at least that's my I was trying to justify the signing when it happened. I'm like, why would he sign with the White Sox instead of the Cubs? And it's like, well, it's probably because like he's guaranteed to have more playing time.
Yeah. Well, here's the second base, and it's going to be weird to see. And then again, that's why it's so interesting to me to see how it plays out. Like second base alone, here's the list of guys that I think are conditioned for that job: Brooks Baldwin, Rojas, Jacob Amaya, Chase Meadroff, Vargas, and Lenyn Sosa. So that's like what, 7 guys right there? Yeah, 6. You had 6 guys in contention to play second base. So it's going to be very interesting to see how all of that shakes out. The outfield's pretty set, I think, for the most part. Now, I think the Michael A. Taylor signing signals they're going to be trading Luis Robert at some point, but I think that was kind of a given already, especially if he gets off to a hot start. The White Sox, who wanted to trade him this offseason, they're going to cash out as soon as they can. As soon as that value looks a little bit higher, I see them cashing out.
speaking of the outfield, is Benintendi going to transition to the DH spot?
I don't see it as bad as he was defensively. I mean, you could because
The power went up. Finally hit some home runs.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I could see him. You know what? Aldi might be on the side, especially if they want Vargas on the roster because they don't want to risk losing him so early. And you want to play him in left field, which I would hate because he looked awful in left field last year. But the White Sox, they were willing to put first baseman in the outfield, so who knows? Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe Benintendi gets some runway as a DH.
Thinking that through. Because at that point, that's where you get your most value out of Benintendi. It's like, all right, we're gonna DH you, swing for the fences. That's what you'll do. Vargas, we gotta find you a spot somewhere, man.
Yeah.
If it's left field, well, please at least get to playable.
Yeah.
Like Vargas, because again, the bat has to play because we know that he's never gonna be like good defensively anywhere. He just needs to be passable.
I will say this for Vargas, even after his abysmal offensive season, Gene Watson early in the offseason, like season just ended. They're asking Gene Watson, who's White Sox player personnel guy that Chris Getz brought in. Like, who's a guy that you're going to be high on last, or you think like they were asking him, like, where's the offense going to come from? And he's like, well, like Luis Robert, like obviously. And then the other name that he said was surprising to a lot of people was Miguel Vargas. And he's like, we're still very high on Vargas. And he comes into camp, he bulked up, he added like 20 pounds of muscle. So like clearly he's taking it seriously. You don't get excited about like, oh, best shape of your life. We hear that every year, but at least he is taking it seriously. So he seems like he's bought in.
I do give
hitting coach.
Maybe all these guys don't deserve it, but like guys with pedigree, like guys who used to be top 100 prospects, I do think you should give him a little bit more of a leeway because like his situation last year just so drastic. Obviously, going from the best team in baseball to the worst team. It just has to be a miserable experience. Right. We saw the facial expressions like every game. And it just like, and you read off his numbers earlier. Just like, that's just like, that was worst case scenario of worst case scenarios for him. That reminds me of like Corey Lee. Remember Corey Lee, his rookie year? And like, that was also like heading towards like all time bad. And then, I know he ended up being bad in the second half last year, but he started off good at the plate in 2024. So I don't think Sox fans should like completely be out on Vargas. Like there's talent there. Like there is talent there.
Even if, like I want him to get I hope they give him every opportunity to succeed because we traded Kopech for him. And like we saw what Kopech was still a damn good pitcher. Now obviously I think it was Garrett Crochet. It didn't make sense to keep him around because how far away they were. And I get that, but trade valuable assets, give him a longer runway. All right, let's wrap up with this. Cubs DFA'd a guy. Craig, who writes for us for Sports Mockery, he's a big fan of this guy, and he thinks the White Sox should pick him up. Were you surprised that our friend was DFA'd by the Cubs? Well, explain to the people who this man was, and did you think he got shafted by the Cubs? I guess were you surprised that he got DFA'd? I think you're muted again. I think you're muted.
I'm back.
There we go.
All right. So Cubs signed Turner. They got to make a move on the 40-man. Ends up being Alexander Canario. I was a little surprised at first. I was trying to be like, they have the Cubs early in the offseason. They traded Matt Mervis, Cubs legend Matt Mervis. RIP. Not dead. They traded Matt Mervis for Vidal Brujan, who hasn't hit at all in his MLB career. But again, he's versatile. Mitch.
Gotta count for something. I think you muted yourself again. There we go. Now I got you.
Do something here. All right. So he can hit. And I'm like, why didn't they just DFA Brujan? Like, who cares if you lose him, if you put him on waivers and you lose him? He's not good. I don't think it's good. Canario is 24 years old. Breakout season in 2022. Hit 37 home runs. Stole 20-plus bases. Made it up to AAA. He looked like he was primed to be at least like the first guy you call up in case of an injury in 2023. But he suffers a horrific injury playing winter ball in the Dominican in October 2022. Tears up his ankle, fractured ankle, dislocated shoulder. That wipes off.
Wait, what do you do? Dislocated shoulder too. What the hell? Was that like a brawl?
He was running to first base. He steps on first base, cleats like bad step, tears up the ankle, lands awkwardly on his shoulder. It was horrific.
Yeah.
Horrific. It was like a freak accident. It's like, the ankle is one thing, but then he like also lands on his shoulder weird. That takes 6 months off of his 2023 season. Any shot of him like getting a real chance to play that year, it's done. And he would have had a chance. Early in that year, Seiya Suzuki, he had the oblique injury that kept him out for a month. He could have filled in. Cody Bellinger in May, he gets hurt in Houston. Canario could have been called up to fill in center field because PCA wasn't ready yet at the time. But again, the injury, he's rehabbing from the surgeries. He's not ready to come back. He doesn't get called up until September 2023. He gets buried on the bench by David Ross. He only gets 17 at-bats in September. Non-factor. 2024, Cubs re-sign Cody Bellinger. PCA has another year at AAA. The first guy that they're going to call up in case of an injury, it's Pete Crow Armstrong. It's not going to be Canario. Canario doesn't really get a lot of playing time. In total, he gets 45 plate appearances with the Cubs. Again, what are you going to make of that sample size? I think he hit fine. The slash line is fine, but like it's 45 plate appearances, whatever. We head in 2025. Cubs trade for Kyle Tucker. Seiya Suzuki moves to the DH spot. You have Ian Happ. You have Pete Crow Armstrong. You have your prospects who just have a better pedigree. You have Owen Casey. You have Kevin Alcantara. There's just no real shot of a playing time for him, for Canario. So I get it. At first, I was like, this doesn't make sense. Get rid of this other guy who's not good. But okay, versatility. I still don't. All right, but fine. Versatility, Canario. He was trying to work first base in spring training to make himself more versatile.
Right.
The other important thing is that he's out of minor league options. So if he doesn't make the team, you can't just option him to AAA. You then have to put him on waivers, and other teams are going to grab him. It's just bad timing. It's bad timing. It was that injury. That injury just ruined any shot of an opportunity to get an actual look at him in the majors. And now the Cubs have better options that are going to be starting. So
I get all that. But like, what do they have to lose by keeping him in camp? Well, maybe I guess if you want other guys to get more reps in games, well, like, what do they have to lose for like keeping him in camp and like, hey, let him bet. You cut him at the end of camp, no harm, no foul. But I think odd timing too, like spring training.
I think what's going to happen now is he's going to be traded because he does have that like potential that's still out there. He's young enough, 24. He hasn't gotten a lot of playing time. When he's played, he's shown some glimpses. Good power. He can play all three outfield spots. He's all right in center field.
We can offer you a Mike Clevinger for him.
No.
And you need to bullpen people. Chris Getz.
He would be a good fit on the like if the White Sox are able to trade. We'll take Luis Robert Jr. If the White Sox are able to trade like Luis Robert Jr. somebody somewhere else, and like another spot opens up in the outfield, I think it would be great. Or like even take like Slater. Some of these veteran guys that you guys have.
Every guy in the outfield. All five, like I'm going to say like four starters because the platoon with Talkman and Slater, they're going to based off matches, but they're both starters. All four of them could be trade candidates. Mm-hmm. I think they want to flip. If obviously Robert, they want to flip. Benintendi, they came out in the offseason and said they were trying to trade. It's just no teams wanted him because of that big contract. But if he gets off to a hot start too, they'll happily trade him. And I think same as Slater and Talkman. I mean, either of them get off to a hot start. Like Talkman every year seems like the perfect trade candidate to like, hey, we're one depth piece away because he's a great player to have on a contending team.
Oh, he's gonna be so solid for you. Like White Sox fans are gonna like Mike Talkman.
Yeah.
Like he's not gonna be spectacular, but he'll draw a walk, he'll get a hit, he'll make the plays that need to be made in the outfield. Sometimes he'll make a nice defensive play, but like they at bats, you're gonna like the at bats.
He always seemed to come up in big moments too, which I always loved. Yeah. He was so clutch. And like the numbers don't blow you away. He's like what? Like a 250 hit. So he's not like some slugger.
He's a high on base guy. He's like
hit or a guy to get on base to start a rally. It always seemed like Talkman was in the right spot at the right time.
Yeah. So like, yeah. And like Canario, any rebuilding team should want to be in on Canario because there is that untapped potential there. And for a team like the White Sox, it does make sense.
And I don't think they're very high on their outfielders coming up through the pipes. Like, obviously, you got Braden Montgomery, who we're not going to see this year because he's coming back from the ankle injury, so he's going to get a full season. So that's one future outfielder potentially. But after that, it's not a whole lot. You got Zach DeLoach that they already DFA'd, who they just traded for. Dominic Fletcher, I don't think they're very high on, or they wouldn't brought in Michael A. Taylor because he would have been the guy in line to get a lot of those starts if Robert was gone. And then after that, you look at top 30 prospect. There's not a whole lot of outfielders that you could say like, yes, this guy is like next man up. So Canario would have been. I agree with you. I think that's the perfect guy, the White Sox.
So I do like on the flip side with this, Alexander Canario. I mentioned that 2022 season that he had, great season. It's not like he was ever really considered like one of the top prospects in the Cubs system. He does have a lot of swing and miss in the game. I've seen like the Cubs traded who they trade a couple years ago. They traded away another outfielder, Nelson Velasquez, to the Royals for reliever Jose Cuas, and that ended up being a shit show for the Cubs. Yeah. Nelson Velasquez had like a great second half for the Royals in 2023, and then in 2024 he was really bad and he got optioned to AAA. That could end up being Alexander Canario just because it's that. Big power. He's swinging for the fences. He can be exploited. So like,
but that's what you're getting. Like, I mean, you're getting,
but like a rebuilding team.
Waivers, like that's kind of what you're expecting. It's like
a rebuilding team. That's the shot you want to take because if you even get a couple good seasons out of him, that's a win. That's a win. Like you bought yourself something.
That's why I love the Jacob Amaya signing for the Sox last year when they claimed him. I was like, you know what? I get it. Let's give him a shot. Now, I thought it was a little weird they brought him back again after DFAing him this offseason and the Orioles DFA. But like in that similar ilk, like it's like, yeah, throw something.
Hasn't that happened a couple times though? I think I saw Beef Left tweeting about it. Like, is it good or bad that you're able to DFA guys, but you eventually get them back because nobody else wants them? Like they're put on waivers, they go unclaimed, and then you just
shocked the Orioles claimed him. I wasn't shocked that when he got DFA'd a few days after getting claimed, but the fact that like a contending team claimed him, like, oh, hey, this is promising. Yeah, maybe there was something to this guy. He just couldn't hit, man. I thought he was a good defender and like another guy that was like kind of versatile, like but like he couldn't hit.
Like that's the interesting part about like all these guys, just like a Nicky Lopez. Like again, he like can't really hit. Well, like he's been able to stick around because he does play good defense. Like he's good enough at a couple positions, and like we're seeing it. Like the Mets signed Nick Madrigal. Like the Mets are a competing team,
yeah.
And they give him like a split contract. Like he gets more money if he makes it to the MLB roster, and obviously a pay cut if he's in the minors. Well, like Nick Madrigal with his being able to play third base for the Cubs, he bought himself
more time.
Not a year of playing overseas. He's like, all right, guys, I can still be somewhat useful for you.
But that's what it takes. It takes a guy to the point earlier we were talking about the Red Sox, but they're so worried about their roles. I mean, that's why a guy like Nick Madrigal sticks in the league. Because he'll play any position you want. He can do it serviceably. He's a professional about it. That's why. And I think Nick Madrigal is very similar, like an easy guy. You just plug and play anywhere. You're not going to get a whole lot of drama out of him. Is he great? No, but he's professional. He goes about it. Not that Devers isn't, but they're willing to accept whatever role you're going to throw. And that,
I do like whenever these situations do come up. I liked how I think it was a lot of Boston and Yankees fans going back and forth because like when the Yankees got A-Rod, that was the whole big story how Derek Jeter didn't want to move from shortstop and he was dog shit defensively at shortstop.
Yep.
When A-Rod was in his prime and was the better defender, but he's like, well, I'm Derek Jeter. I'm the Yankees shortstop. It's like, well, but it's the Yankees, so yeah.
The thing is, too, though, they're like, where are we going to move Jeter?
To third. I think they just moved to third.
He could play third. Yeah, I guess like Jeter could have played third, but like I don't think
because that was the whole thing. It's like by that point he lost his range.
Yeah.
So, but like that's the thing with Devers. That's the scary part of, and that's why I love the Cubs getting Kyle Tucker because you obviously feel a lot more comfortable paying a guy who plays plays a premium or not a premium, but like center field would be I guess the premium defensive position, but like he plays right field. You feel more comfortable spending $450 million on that compared to a guy who eventually you're going to be DHing first base.
I hope Cubs fans realize how good Kyle Tucker is. I don't think enough people were as excited.
I don't think they do.
And because he is the most, in my opinion, he's one of the most underrated players in the MLB. That guy is such a stud. He was such a big reason the Astros were good. But like he would never get, like he was never talked about in those like Bregman, Altuve, but he was just as good, if not better than both of them. He is an absolute stud.
And I think because like he came like who is it the other lefty Jordan Alvarez, like he's like such a monster too that like he like took over the spotlight as well.
Right.
And yeah, like it's unbelievable how much Kyle Tucker just got lost in the shuffle there.
Well, he's just kind of boring. Like he's a generic white guy. I don't think I've ever heard him talk. He's just got like Kyle Tucker is like a boring name. It's not like Tater Workman or whatever. Hey, it's like so he flies under
his numbers. I haven't seen him talk enough to really get the full scope of his personality, but the numbers, the way he hits, it's just kind of like Chris Bryant. Like he's just going to be consistently good. You're not going to get drama from him. Probably underrated. And hopefully this time around the Cubs do pay Kyle Tucker, not how they didn't pay Chris Bryant.
I'm going to place my bets now and say they won't. They will not pay Kyle Tucker. A lot of it, honestly, just might depend on like how good they look. If they're hovering around 500, they're not going to pay him. But if they're like tearing it up, and I think they're content, they're like, all right, like we have to pay him.
Well, I think if they're 500, he's like, oh, I don't want to be here.
He'll go wherever the money goes. I bet. If they're offering him the money he wants, I'm sure he would stay.
I wonder what he gets. Like, does he get 500 million?
Ooh, yeah. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
Man,
I thought it'd be around like the over 400 for sure, but I figured like 425, 450 range. But I wouldn't be surprised if it got up to 500.
Well, that's the thing. There was that one MLB Network shredder list, the whatever computer algorithm, and they had Kyle Tucker, number 2 right fielder, ahead of Juan Soto.
Yeah.
His agency is going to be showing that list to the Cubs.
He's got like the good personality, and so people talk about Juan Soto, and that's why he's like this big box office draw. Kyle Tucker's just as good, if not better. He's just boring. He's just boring. But that's why he flies under the radar. Cubs fans are going to be very happy with that. I did not see enough people. Now, maybe it's just because I'm mostly on White Sox Twitter, but even from my Cubs fans, like it's like they made that signing. It's like sending out all these notifications to everyone. Like, hey, did you guys see this? Like, you guys should be a lot more people more excited about the Bellinger signing, I thought, than they were about Tucker, which made no sense.
I don't know if it's no, you're right, because even I remember that week because it all happened so fast. It was like the week after the winter meetings, and like I think it was Monday when they asked the Houston GM, so like Kyle Tucker, I need like trade, like are you even thinking about that? And he's like, I mean, yeah, we're open to taking calls. And it's like, whoa, what? That became a thing on Monday. I think a couple days later is like when the names started. It's like, oh, the Cubs are talking to Houston. These are the names they're discussing. They want this prospect. Like maybe like say Suzuki's name kept getting brought up. Like obviously that was never going to happen. Whatever. That was whatever negotiation that was going on. And then it happened within 4 days. That the deal got done on Friday. And yeah, I remember like obviously excited about it. But like I don't know why like in the weeks after I don't know if it's because like nothing else was happening, like the moves kind of stopped, where like people were like forgot or like the holidays maybe like the holidays came around, Christmas came around. I don't know, but no, you're right. Like I also think that Cody Bellinger when he signed it was like right when spring training started, so it's like okay, the baseball is back. It's like oh wait shit now Bellinger's back, right? It's like no, but you're right though. I think Cubs fans were a lot more excited when they re-signed Bellinger than the Kyle Tucker trade. And you know what it is though? I do think part of it is because he's a free agent after this year.
Yeah, and
Cubs have a terrible history of not paying
him too. So it's like, well, I mean, right?
They gave up a pretty good prospect in Cam Smith, and people are like, "Fuck, we trade all this just for 1 year of Kyle Tucker." So I think that kind of killed the mood a little.
Jed might be done after his contract's up. Because like, why else would you make that move if you think you're only going to get him for 1 year? It's like, hey, I'm only going to be here 2 more years. I'm trying to maximize the roster I have now, and this is the best way to do it because I'm going to be here long term. But like anyway, so I that could be an interesting thing to watch for sure. You got any final thoughts before we let the people go on this fine Friday night?
No, just happy baseball is back. Happy that we can kind of see it on
on Twitter at least.
On Twitter,
You're talking about this just how ridiculous it is that the Chicago Sports Network.
Oh, actually, I do have one more thought. Last thing, and I related to the TV. MLB baseball, ESPN, done after this year. Done.
Talk about that earlier.
And I know there are some thoughts like, man, how sad. But I'm kind of glad it happened because that's how bad Sunday Night Baseball had become.
I am too. Hey, well, like they didn't do anything to help grow the game.
Like you talk to any fan base, like when the White Sox were at their peak, like 2020, 2021, Cubs fans when they were always on like Sunday Night Baseball, we dreaded those games. We're like, fuck, this game's on Sunday Night Baseball. Shit. Like we just hated the broadcast. It was a talk show that just happened to have baseball in the background.
Yeah, well, it was such their coverage of the baseball in general. Outside Jeff Passan, he does pretty good work. I think I got a couple guys there that do some good work. But like for the most part, it was so half-assed. The Sunday Night Baseball was atrocious, and like you look at these other like ESPN invests a lot of money in the NBA too, and all of their flagship shows throughout the day they talk about it. Monday Night Football, they invest a lot in that too. They talk about it. And I get it. It's popular. But, like, you're investing a lot in the MLB, too. You never had any, like, daily shows covering that. You'd never see any conversations about that. You get maybe a quick segment on, like, Sports Center here or there. But, like, yeah, so no wonder the ratings weren't, like, great. It's like they didn't do anything to help drive it or make the game better. I hope we get someone that wants to invest in the sport, that's excited to have it, and, like, will actually give a shit. Because there's times at ESPN it looks like, it was like baseball is an afterthought for them. That's not going to grow the game.
I saw somebody suggest it, and like I think they were trying to paint it in a negative view because like you're gonna have to pay for it. But you can't argue that the presentation of the broadcast I think is like A1, like top tier. Like it would make sense that MLB, if they get an exclusive, like Sunday night package, it would probably be Apple TV.
Yeah.
And maybe you don't like some of the announcers, but like the presentation, the way it looks, I think it's great. Again, subscription, you're gonna have to pay another if you don't already have Apple TV. It's just that's another thing. The way that we have TV now just sucks, man. We were talking before we started recording. Like for the White Sox, you're gonna have to pay a monthly subscription to pay. The Cubs, it's the same thing. You got to pay for Marquee. If you don't have cable or anything.
MLB Network used to be a staple, and YouTube TV dropped that. So
yeah, YouTube TV is just out on all the regional sports channels.
Which is it's a shame, man. Even Bally Sports, like down here, that was like the big one for the Cardinals. Like they sold all theirs too. Like the regional sports networks are slowly dying. All the teams just taking over them. It's kind of sad. Hate to see it. There's nothing better than like coming home and like watching Sox game. You get the Chicago Sports Network music, or not Chicago, NBC Sports Chicago or Comcast Sports Network music. Hawk.
I remember it used to be, was it Fox Sports Net? Fox Sports Net.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I mean, or even back, when the games were on WCIU. The U. Channel 26. They used to have some games on there in Chicago. Yeah, it just sucks, man. It just sucks. I'm gonna have that next month. I'm gonna start paying for Marquee.
Maybe
$20 a
that's
month.
the strategy, although. Like the Sox were so down because of the season tickets being down, they weren't getting ticket sales. Like, if we take the games off of TV, it's the old Bill Wirtz strategy. Hey, they're gonna come to the stadium to see the game. Well, that's how we'll get the fans. Maybe that's what they're trying to do.
Well, we need to know what like the 2025 version of their milkshake is gonna be. Like what's the new thing this year?
I don't know, man. I did try it when I was down there, but like for all the hype that thing got, like.
Well, remember, apparently they started just it wasn't as authentic anymore. It wasn't as
they started
as homemade.
Yeah, because like so many people would like come in. I was glad I came in when I did, because the first Sox game I went to, and it was still pretty early in the season, but I went before the game, like a half hour before first pitch, because I don't like putzing around trying to get beers or anything during the game. I like watching the full game. And I get in there, and like the way they had it set up, you had to give, like, I go to the station they have, they're like, no, like the line starts back there. But like to get to the line, you have to go to the bar first, place your order and pay for it there. And then they give you a ticket. And then you got to get back into the line and like stand there with your ticket waiting. And so like, I almost missed first pitch doing it, but I remember I was sitting there in front of the show. Drew, like his wife wanted him to get him one. I think she was pregnant at the time. It's like, Drew, like I want a campfire milkshake. He left in the third inning. He was not back till the seventh inning.
Oh my God.
It was like insane. Like the lines were like ridiculous. And for what? Like this, like sometimes to your point, because the lines are so long, the way it looked in like the photos, they were taking shortcuts making that thing. They just had some big bat of marshmallows they were stirring around. All right, we're gonna throw this in
there. But yeah, number one, let's MLB figure out your TV packages. Let's end blackouts, and let's get us. Even if our teams are bad, the White Sox, fans still want to watch them. Make it somewhat easier to watch it. Not that hard of an ask.
If you can't watch them, you can read about them. Sports Mockery, sportsmockery.com. We got all your Chicago teams covered. You don't even have to watch the Bulls or Blackhawks right now. They stink. You're not missing anything, but you can read about them. White Sox, Cubs, spring training. Get excited. Check us out. Make sure to subscribe, like and subscribe, YouTube, and at Sports Mockery. At Pinwheels and Ivy too as well. At Pinwheels Pod on Twitter. You want to give us a follow? Did I miss any plugs? I think I got all the plugs thrown in there.
You got them all.
All right. There we go. Hey, thank you all so much for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your week.